Welcome to today's episode of the J&J Podcast. I'm Jamie.
This is Jameson.
I want to welcome all of our listeners in. A lot going on. The Super Bowl just happened. Well, a game was played, the Eagles showed up, and the Chiefs happened to be there. Let's just call it that. So we're going to jump right in and kind of give you guys our thoughts about the Super Bowl, recap that, some other topics in the NFL. That's what we're going to kick off today's episode with. Jamison, won't you get us started? Tell me what your thoughts were about the Super Bowl last night.
Well, first off, I'm gonna say a huge shout out to the Philadelphia Eagles, man. Fly Eagles, fly, baby. And what's so funny about it is, like everybody knows, I was rooting for the Ravens throughout the duration of the entire NFL playoffs. But y'all also probably picked up from our previous podcast episodes that we were not rooting for the Chiefs. We were basically, I was at the point where even after the Ravens lost, it was like whoever ended up winning, as long as it wasn't the Chiefs, I really could care less. And so I'm so glad that the Eagles ended up winning that Super Bowl. And on top of that, I was over the moon for Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley. For Jalen Hurts to have lost to the Chiefs two years ago in the Super Bowl, balled out in that Super Bowl, by the way. And then I'm thinking about it now. He's now outplayed Patrick Mahomes twice in the Super Bowl. Of course, they didn't win the first year, but last night he outplayed Patrick Mahomes. I'm gonna be honest. Tom Brady was commentating the game. He outplayed Patrick Mahomes. Just to put into perspective of what transpired last night. But the biggest, and I know Jalen Hurts won Super Bowl MVP, but the biggest winner in that game to me was definitely Nick Fangio and that Philadelphia Eagles defense. More specifically, their defensive line. Huge shout out to Montez Sweat, Brandon Graham, Nolan Smith, Jalen Carter. Them dudes, that was the worst game I've ever seen Patrick Mahomes play in his entire career. And it just so happened that it came in the biggest game, arguably, of his career. They were on the brink of, having a three-peat. So the fact that they made Patrick Mahomes look that poor, like, you had people questioning last night, like, oh, is Travis Kelce done? Like, Travis Kelce looked washed. I'm just going to be completely honest with you. Patrick Mahomes looked shell-shocked. I mean, to go from some of the previous games that he had to, like, literally that being the worst game of his career, it just speaks a lot about how good Philly's defense was. I mean, you had Cooper DeJean get a pick six early in the game, and he's a rookie. Huge shout out to him. It was his birthday as well. And then you had Zach Braun get a diving interception. And then on top of that, Patrick Mahomes also, there was a strip fumble whenever he was trying to throw the ball. So he turned the ball over a total of 3 times. And to put into perspective, I think I told you this earlier, Dad, Patrick Mahomes at halftime had a 1 QBR. I've never heard of that in my life. A 1 QBR. Like,
as in 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, like literally the number 1. He had a 1 QBR. To put it into perspective, like the average QBR for a quarterback, a good one is 100. So the brother had a 1 QBR at halftime, and the Chiefs only had 23 net yards gained in the first half. I think I told you earlier, they didn't even get past the 50-yard line until the third quarter. That is absolute. And what makes it even worse, to add insult to injury, the Eagles didn't blitz a single time in that game.
Well, at times it didn't look like he actually made it back to the line of scrimmage.
No,
the 50-yard line. So.
They flat out embarrassed the Chiefs, and I'm so glad they did. Like this, I know the score was 40-22, but real talk, people noticed that actually watched the game. They got that last 14 to 15 points in garbage time. The final score in my eyes was really 40-7.
Yes.
The only bright spot the Chiefs had was that Xavier Worthy had over 150 receiving yards. But like I said, like one of his biggest plays was like a 60-yard touchdown came in garbage time. Like the Eagles came in flat out, controlled the game. And I'll be honest, they made the game easy for Jalen Hurts. He had a phenomenal game, don't get me wrong, and he outplayed Mahomes, but he had 220-some passing yards. And I will say he also carried that Eagles offense with his legs as well. You remember we were talking about it earlier. I was like, he looked like Lamar Jackson on some of those runs.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure he had more total rushing yards than even Saquon Barkley. So the fact that the Eagles came into that game, and if you would have told me coming into that game that Patrick Mahomes would have a 1 QBR at halftime, that they wouldn't get past the 50-yard line until the third quarter, Saquon Barkley wouldn't even total 1 touchdown, and they still put up 40 points, I would have said you're a madman. but they made it happen. So I'll go and transition over to your thoughts because I could keep talking and say a lot, but huge shout out to the Philadelphia Eagles, man.
Yeah, that was honestly it was surprising. And it was surprising because I was pretty much of the mindset that the that the Chiefs were going to win it because they had allowed them to get there. And
Yeah.
what I will say is what it showed is how fraudulent the Chiefs were. Um, what happens when you have a game that is actually officiated fairly? This is what you get, and it showed that the Chiefs were helped to get this far, and that the narrative had been written. And for all the people who, because I'm hearing now folks saying, well, now folks can stop talking about the officiating. To be perfectly honest with you, all you did was confirm what we've been thinking about the officiating because after that first play, I mean, really, the offensive pass interference,
Oh yeah,
after that
AJ
play was
Brown,
called
that was
on
terrible.
AJ Brown, after that was called, I was like, yep, here we go. And I was kind of looking through social media, and that's a lot of what everybody was saying. But after that, I saw Saquon Barkley literally talking to dudes on the sidelines. It was almost like he was saying, we knew this was coming.
Yeah.
Stay focused, get it under control. Let's play football. And from that moment on, they did. It showed how fraudulent the Chiefs were and how they were helped to get to this point. So that whole mentality, the whole narrative of, oh no, it wasn't the officials. Yeah, it was. That the officials are the reason they got here. Now that you have to actually play a team on even ground, a team that is going to, as you said, didn't even blitz him, but just brought the heat all night long against Patrick Mahomes. And the other part of it is, and I just have to mention this because I saw Alex Smith last night afterwards talking like, well, Patrick Mahomes had absolutely no help. He was doing everything by himself. So where was all this leading up to the Super Bowl? How did he get to the Super Bowl? He literally did everything by himself. Is that what you're trying to say, Alex Smith? Because I'm like, please stop glazing this dude. Like, stop making excuses for him. The Eagles played a great game. Jalen Hurts, even though, I mean, and I'll admit it, you and I earlier in the season had some questions, but he shut everybody up. You can't say a word about how that dude played. That one interception that he threw, and I think that that was just a miscommunication
Outside of
more than
that, he had a
anything.
perfect game.
He had a perfect game. Running the football, the fact that he was able to, I mean, there were literally like 5 or 6 plays where they needed a first down. He didn't just get a first down; he picked up, lots of yardage.
Yeah.
So to watch how he literally controlled the game, and then for him to give kudos to the defense because they were, afterwards asking
Mm-hmm.
him, well, what are your thoughts? And he said, defense wins championships. And he said, our defense gave us a short field. Now, I've seen other teams have short fields before, but they weren't able to do what he was able to do against the Chiefs last night.
And Dad, can I add
So,
to that real quick? One
yeah,
thing
yeah,
I'll go, and I'll be honest, I feel like I've been guilty of this in the past, but I think the thing is we've always liked Jalen Hurts and we've rooted for him. I just think part of the problem was, and I was guilty of this. We see a lot of these other top tier quarterbacks like Lamar and Josh Allen throw for 400, 300 something yards and win football games. It's like you can still be a top 5 to 10 quarterback without having to put up the craziest numbers. Like what Jalen Hurts has proven is he's a bona fide winner. He did it at
that's right.
Alabama. He's now done it with the Eagles, and it's like I feel like people got to get over the fact of the expectation of, oh, you need to throw for 400 football yards, throw for 400 passing yards to be an effective quarterback. Last night he had a little over 200 passing yards, but made timely plays, made timely throws, and like you said, he also had a ton of rushing yardage too that came in timely moments. So I think going forward, there's no doubt in my mind that Jalen Hurts is a top 10 quarterback, and it's going to be really interesting to see how like some of these upcoming rookies and stuff like that are graded because I mean Jalen Hurts proved with the right system, and I mean he honestly showed a lot of poise last night, being able to silence the critics. You don't got to sit there and throw for 400 passing yards and just play hero ball to win football games. Like the formula that the Eagles had last night was genuinely perfect.
It absolutely was. It really was. I mean, that defense was swarming.
Yep.
And to be perfectly honest with you, when I looked at after that offensive pass interference call, as I was mentioning earlier, I honestly thought, here we go. But the Eagles were able to collect themselves because a lot of times, and I mean, the Ravens were guilty of this. After there were some really bad calls in that game. It was almost like the Ravens couldn't adjust when they played the Chiefs. Earlier in the season, and what was that? The first or second game of the season?
You talking about the Ravens?
Yeah, when the
That was
Ravens
the
played the
that was
Chiefs.
literally the very first game of the season.
That was first game of the season,
Hmm.
exactly, and they weren't able to make the adjustments because you saw some of the calls. And
Yep.
if you're not being honest, if you say that the Chiefs haven't been helped by the officiating,
Oh, they have. And to your
you
point, the second that they weren't helped last night, look what happened.
that's right. That's exactly my point. I think it was JJ Watts saying something like, "Oh well, the narrative of the officiating." No, 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 my brother. What last night proved is the officiating is the reason why they got there. And
Yep.
now that you have to play a team straight up, and the officials aren't really helping you, this is the end result.
And Dad,
So,
to add to your point, we said that throughout the entire season. Like the Chiefs, I have never seen more of a Mickey Mouse Super Bowl run in my life.
my
Like,
God,
like
yes,
it's like no troll. Like they had so many games where the margin of victory was minuscule, and then like game-winning field goals, block field goals. Like even against the Bills, the round prior, like the 4th and 1 call. Like they had so many things go their way this year. Of course, going back to the referees and just luck being on their side, it's like to your point, it showed whenever they actually had to face a really good team and like that was prepared. And that's the thing, the Eagles came in, they weren't scared of the Chiefs at all. I feel like a lot of other teams are always intimidated by the Chiefs, and I get it. It's like you're already dealing with a quarterback that they glaze, they anoint as the next Tom Brady, and then you have to play against the refs. Remember we talked about it a couple weeks ago whenever the Texans played against them. After the
yep,
game, D'Amico Ryans, Joe Mixon, CJ Stroud, they were all alluding to the fact that like it was their team versus everybody. And they were
yep,
talking about the referee. So it's like, that was the most Mickey Mouse run I've ever seen to a Super Bowl, and I'm so glad. I think the only other person that might be happier than me is Tom Brady. Because now all that GOAT talk is silenced now. It ain't
yep,
even you can't. I mean, Brady's 7-2. Granted, realistically, he could be 5-4. Shout out Malcolm Butler and
mm,
Bump Pete Carroll.
yep.
And
Deflate gate and
28-3. Come on now.
yeah, yeah.
But 7-2 record in the Super Bowl is outrageous. And it's like the only thing that Patrick Mahomes would have had on Tom Brady that he didn't have is the 3P. And it's like that can't happen anymore. And one more quick question for you before we switch gears. Do you think that the Chiefs are done making the Super Bowl?
Um, I don't know. I don't know if they're actually done. I think it's going to be considerably harder. I don't think that there's going to be that whole discussion around, oh, because I think was it like Tom Brady was 3-2 in his first five Super
Yeah.
Bowls or something like that.
Yeah.
So I know that there's been that comparison. Could he get back? Yeah, I think he could. Um, but I don't think it's going to be the same configuration. It's not going to be the same group of players. I think they're going to have to move on from Kelsey eventually, because to your point, he looked washed. They're going to have to go get an actual real running back. Those are dudes that were just
Cause
kind of
and I like
piece.
Pacheco. It's just like he was hurt though, so he didn't really get a full season like we're accustomed to seeing from him.
Yeah,
And then on
agreed.
top of that, to your point, they got. I mean, Xavier Worthy balled out. Don't get me wrong, and I know
Yeah,
they didn't have Rasheed Rice and stuff, but it's like they honestly got to go get a bona fide number 1 wide receiver if you ask me.
I agree.
Like if they had Tyreek Hill, we might be talking. It's wild to think that they actually did have that brother.
Yeah,
But also too, like you know, that whole offensive line discussion, the Chiefs had a top 10 offensive line coming into that game. Now, maybe they'll look back at that game and be like, we need to upgrade our offensive line. But in my opinion, they need to upgrade their defensive front, if you ask me. Their safeties and corners are still solid. But outside of Chris Jones, Karlaftis didn't have a good game. I didn't see him in the backfield at all throughout that game.
no, I mean that's what I'm saying. So when you look at pieces that they need to go out and shore up, because I don't even know who their backup tight end is. Like
I couldn't
because
tell
we
you.
hear, yeah, I have no idea. So I think that's going to happen. And I mean, after last night, they're also going to need to shore up their offensive line because
I
my
agree.
God, they got whooped.
Yep.
I mean that looked like that almost looked like a varsity team or a college football team playing against a JV, front seven.
Yeah.
That was a whooping. Um, so, I mean, I think we've covered pretty much everything. I,
Yeah.
I will say, I think one quick thing before we transition. Last night, I saw on social media as the game was starting that Patrick Mahomes walked in with basically an Eagles green double-breasted
Yeah.
suit on.
I saw that.
Um, yeah, here's what I will say: he should have changed before he left. He should when he did the press or whatever. I look, he should have changed that outfit because that only made it worse. I heard some dudes talking about money green. No, that probably meant green with envy because of the way y'all got beat down.
Facts.
That was really really bad. Yeah, I get the whole I'm confident and I'm bringing it or whatever, but you got beat down like that. You might want to change your suit. You probably should have had an extra suit to change
And don't
into.
be disrespectful. Like
Right.
you coming in with a green suit on, like, and Jalen Hurts on the flip side wearing a cane go. Come on, bruh. Like,
Exactly.
be respectful, bruh. But hey,
Yes,
hey, it backfired. So
that's right. Sit down. Be humble. Um, so
speaking of sit down, be humble.
yes, yes. By all means, jump right into it. Go right ahead and talk about Aaron Rodgers.
um, here's what I'm gonna say. And you know me, this kind of hurts because as a football player, I've always loved Aaron Rodgers as a football player. I think from a talent perspective, he's one of the best quarterbacks we've ever seen from a talent perspective. But it was announced yesterday that, or it might have been Saturday, that the Jets have decided to move on from Aaron Rodgers, so he will not be the quarterback heading into next season. So my initial thoughts about that, I'm honestly not really shocked. I mean, given even the way the season ended, it just sucks for the Jets though because you fired who was a great coach and a good fit. Of course, I'm very happy for Aaron Glenn, but you fire your coach mid-season because of Aaron Rodgers. You literally trade for Devontae Adams because of Aaron Rodgers, and now that brother's not even going to be there. Like, there was so much change that happened within that organization throughout this season
Because of him.
because of Aaron Rodgers. Now the joke ain't even gonna be there next year.
Hmm.
And early reports are saying that the betting favorites to actually go get him are the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I don't know how I feel about that because you know me, I love Justin Fields. And I don't want to see another season of Aaron Rodgers going out there playing pedestrian when that could be another year where Justin Fields can continue to develop as a quarterback. Because I think long term, like the Steelers having a dual threat quarterback is going to be huge. I mean, I think we saw it this past year with Russell Wilson. Just a strictly just a pocket passer is only going to take them but so far. Especially they don't have the craziest running game. Like their defense is really good, but outside of George Pickens, their receivers are not that crazy either. So you're going to need a quarterback that can go out there and make plays. Aaron Rodgers can't do that anymore with his legs like he used to be able to in the past. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Aaron Rodgers. But I think for the Jets moving forward, if I'm the Jets, I'd do everything in my power to go out there and get Matthew Stafford. Because if they can get Matthew Stafford with that defense now and Aaron Glenn coming in, putting an emphasis on defense, I think the Jets can actually compete next year, given their roster. We'll see what happens. And I think if they're smart too, to be able to maximize, hopefully trying to keep Garrett Wilson, because he might leave. You know what I'm saying? Like Garrett
Yeah.
Wilson could potentially ask out, or to Devontae Adams could try to just up and leave if he really wants to, or ask for another trade. So if I'm the Jets, your defense is already set up. You have Brees Hall. Go out there and try to get a Matthew Stafford because I think he's the missing piece that they need down there in New York. But your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't disagree. I like. Well, here's what I will disagree with. Not with you, but I would disagree if the Pittsburgh Steelers were the betting favorite because here's the reality. I don't necessarily think that Mike Tomlin, the foolishness that's been happening for the last year or two, that Mike Tomlin will be under fire. But Aaron Rodgers gets dudes fired. Let's
Facts.
just be honest. He does. I don't think that would happen necessarily with Mike Tomlin, but I wouldn't take a chance. That dude is not. He's not a rabbit's foot. He's the opposite. And I just don't think he has the physical abilities anymore to be that guy. And if you look at, like you said, what the Steelers actually have, they need a dual threat quarterback to be effective in that offense. Aaron Rodgers showed this past year, even with Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson, that he's washed. It's just time to take it home. It's time to get that retirement package and take it to the house. He's done. So I hope that that doesn't happen because I like Mike Tomlin. I think he's a great coach. But Aaron Rodgers is one of those figures that tends to, wherever he goes or whatever environment he's in, it's all about Aaron Rodgers.
Yep.
So I'm glad that the Jets are moving on from him. I'm glad that that's actually going to happen. I like the Matthew Stafford, potentially being brought in. That would be great. As long as Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson both stay.
Facts.
And I'm hoping that, to your point, if he were to come, I'm sure that both of them would probably want to stay.
Yeah.
I think Garrett Wilson was ready to leave because of Aaron
Yeah,
Rodgers.
facts. Those
You
are
know
the
what I mean?
reports that I saw too. It was because of
Yeah,
Aaron Rodgers. So he might
yeah,
change his tune depending on who they bring in at quarterback. To your point.
right,
Yeah.
right, exactly. So let's hope let's hope that the Steelers come to their senses and they don't actually sign Rodgers because I'm just not. It's just time.
Yeah.
Um, Speaking of transitions, Kellen Moore to the Saints.
I
I don't
love
know
it.
how. I was gonna say I don't know how I feel about that, but and I guess because of if you look at how effective the Eagles were last night,
Yeah.
you know, and there could be some, there's gonna be some recency bias. Folks are gonna look at it, but I also recall Kellen Moore being in Dallas.
Well, see, I
Now
was gonna
again,
bring that up.
no, but I know where you're gonna go with it, and I will agree with you on this aspect of it. Him being in Dallas is totally different than him being in Philly, where he's
Yeah.
given, actually given the keys and given the ability to be who he is and to call plays and to do what he is capable of doing with the Eagles versus what he had to deal with when he was with the Cowboys. So I hadn't really given it a lot of thought exactly how that would transition. I mean, they're going to certainly have to sure up who their quarterback is going to be,
Yeah, Derek
but
Carr stinks. I'm sorry.
yeah, it is, and that's what I was gonna say. So I hope that's the first thing he's gonna have. He's gonna have to address that before anything else. But when I look at how he called plays last night, how effective he was with, once they got the ball in good field position, the types of plays that he called. And here's what I will say: I have to agree with him on this. He didn't just abandon the run, even though Saquon Barkley wasn't as effective as we're accustomed to. He didn't just abandon it. And then he started using, the pass out of the backfield as somewhat of an extension of the running game. I liked that adjustment last night because it gave them some crucial first downs, and
Yep.
it actually showcased the fact that Saquon Barkley can do a little bit of both.
Mm-hmm.
So from that perspective, yeah, and it's not necessarily, I'll say this and I'll let you jump in. It's not necessarily about Kellen Moore. It's about whether or not the Saints are willing to make the moves that they need to make.
I
That's what I
agree.
question. So, your thoughts?
Oh no, I completely agree, and I will tell you this: somebody I am happy for if he can stay healthy next year in the Kellen Moore offense is Alvin Kamara,
Oh yeah,
because I mean, you look what he's been able to do with Saquon. Granted, they have the best offensive line in the entire National Football League, but if the Saints can beef up their line a little bit, they have Chris Olave, they have some solid weapons. Like they can make things shake a little bit on offense. It's just all going. It's really going to be about the quarterback situation and their linemen. Because outside of that, they still have some solid weapons. Their defense is pretty good. It's usually middle of the pack, which that can improve as well this offseason. But the reason I was going to bring up the Cowboys is because it's just wild for Kellen Moore. You were literally the offensive coordinator for the Cowboys. Mike McCarthy got tired of you getting all the shine on offense because the
yep,
Cowboys' offense was at its best when Kellen Moore was there. People
true.
can be you can debate a wall about that. And Mike McCarthy wanted the shine and stuff like that. So you get rid of Kellen Moore. The brother leaves, comes to the Eagles, wins a Super Bowl as the coordinator, and then gets a head coaching job for the Saints. The Cowboys are stupid because think about it now. They don't have Mike McCarthy nor Kellen Moore. And if they were smart, what they would have done is you would have just let Mike McCarthy have his last season this year, and then you could have literally just promoted Kellen Moore if he was still your offensive coordinator, to be the head coach. Just literally what they just did. I can't even pronounce the brother's name. Who's the new Cowboys coach that just got promoted? But the Cowboys screwed that up once again.
Isn't he a
Shout out.
Shanahan?
No, he's not a Shanahan. I can't
Oh,
even.
okay.
When I tell you I can't even pronounce his brother's last name, that just
Yeah,
goes to show you who is he.
his who?
I'm not even
Okay,
gonna say.
we're not gonna do a Tommy Davis. We're not gonna do that.
I was close.
You were close. You were very close. Um, but his dad was in the NFL, and Schottenheimer. That's
Yeah,
what it
yeah,
is. Yeah,
Schottenheimer.
it's Brian Schottenheimer, I think.
Yeah, something like that. But my thing is, you could have had Kellen Moore because, like I
Oh, I
said,
agree.
the
Yeah.
Cowboys' offense was at its best when Kellen Moore was the offensive coordinator. The problem was Mike McCarthy was tired of him getting all the shine. He wanted to
Yep.
be calling plays, and look, he's out of a job.
Well,
So
listen. Here's the crazy part about that. We've seen that happen before.
yeah,
So before it was Jerry Jones upset that Jimmy Johnson was getting all the shine, and now you bring in Mike McCarthy as the head coach, who is used to getting shine, and then Kellen Moore is getting the shine from him, and so he gets rid of him. And to your point, now this brother has won a Super Bowl.
yep.
Mike McCarthy is unemployed, and he's now going to be the head coach of the Saints. I couldn't be happier for him, and I couldn't be happier for the Cowboys.
Now that is funny. I love it.
I love it.
No D Wade. I love it.
I love it. I love it. I love it. If you saw my face.
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay. Well, I think that kind of covers most of the topics for the NFL. Let's transition over to the NBA.
Mhm.
And okay, we know we're going to talk about Luka at some point, but in all of that, hoopla that happened with that, Dalton Connect is back with the Lakers. Um, what in the world were the Hornets doing? Like, what
I
happened?
ain't gonna lie, they trying to pull a fast one. Rob
I
Pelinka
mean,
said, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this.
I'm not doing this. That was like that's one of the wildest things. I mean, it's crazy enough that the trade with Luka and Anthony Davis happened, but then the other piece of it is you have to actually rescind because you don't have good brokers on the other side.
Yep.
They're literally trying to pull a fast one, like you said.
It just goes back, and I hate to say this because you never know. Maybe I'll work for them one day. Probably not. But the Hornets are just a poverty franchise right now. It's just now like I remember I called you after the trade deadline. I was like, LaMelo needs to get up out of there because they don't care about winning there. They're just, and I get it. Like they haven't had the best, like even draft wise, they missed out on Wemby. They got Brandon Miller. I like Brandon Miller. I love LaMelo. He's one of my favorite players. But at the same token, it's like you remember we were both hyped to get Mark Williams. And then, like, he was going to be the missing piece. He's young. He's 23. We were saying that he was going to be the center of the future for the Lakers. And the biggest thing was he was going to be a lob threat and someone that could continue to develop alongside Luka. Now Jackson Hayes is our starting center. And I know a lot of Lakers fans are going to be a little concerned, but here's what I'm going to say. JJ Redick is making a strong case to potentially be coach of the year. The way the Lakers have been playing, like, even on Saturday I watched the game. Shout out to Austin Reeves. Brother had a 45-point game. No LeBron. Luka didn't suit up yet. We didn't have Mark Williams. The brother just had a masterclass. And I will say this. Even at the center spot, Jackson Hayes has been playing really, really good basketball. He's staying out of foul trouble. He's finishing around the basket. He's been a great interior defender. Of course, he might not be the long-term option for the Lakers. But what I do like is now, like, one thing that we were lacking outside of whenever we made that Mark Williams trade is a bona fide shooter. Dalton Connect is already a top 10 to 15 perimeter shooter in all of basketball. So the fact that we're about to get him back and he's going to be able to be in lineups where there's a LeBron James out on the floor or a Luka Doncic or a combination of the both. I mean, we've already a combination of the two. We've seen how good he's been able to play on the floor with Austin Reeves and LeBron. Now imagine adding Luka to that. And it's like come playoff time when the game slows down, you're going to need somebody that can just flat out go out there and shoot the basketball. So Of course, to your point, my first thoughts, I was like, yo, I've never seen a trade get rescinded like that. You know what I'm saying? But at the same token, for what the Lakers gave up, because Dalton Connect is a really good basketball player, like, and with him being so young, it's like the fact that we're getting him back now along with that first round pick, I'm not upset about it because now what can happen this offseason is there's gonna be a young center that we can go out there and try to trade for. Trust me, it won't be Mark Williams now, but we might be able to reassess going to get Walker Kessler this offseason. Or Miles Turner might be disgruntled with Indiana. You get what I'm saying? So we
Hmm.
have some options. And I will say with the level of basketball that Jackson Hayes has been playing, I still feel like we can compete, of course, this year and, of course, head into the future if Rob can, get a bona fide future center this offseason. But the Lakers have been on an absolute tear. LeBron's been cooking. Austin Reeves has been playing phenomenal. Rui Hachimura, he's been playing some really good basketball. Like, even Goodwin, Jonathan Goodwin, the guy we just
Yes.
signed, that brother's been giving some valuable minutes, like playing really good basketball. Gabe Vincent, I don't know if he listens to the podcast, but this brother's playing like he was playing in that stint when he was in Miami, like just shooting phenomenal from three. So overall, I've been loving what I've been seeing from the Lakers, and it's all about to change tonight because we get Luka Doncic, making his debut tonight against the Utah Jazz. So I'm over the moon.
Well, so a couple of things because I'm always not necessarily playing devil's advocate, but I'm also going to give you a different angle. I just need to see how Dalton Connect is going to react now that he's back because
Yeah, it
you
could be
know
very awkward.
it could be awkward. I mean, he's human, and so hopefully LeBron, some of the other guys have kind of pulled him under their wing because I mean he's a rookie. He's an older rookie,
Yeah,
but he's still a
facts.
rookie nonetheless, and he's still human. So it'll just be interesting to see how he feels now that he's been brought back and whether or not he can get past that. I would assume that he can because you've got a strong core, you've got some veteran players. So I'll be interested to see how that goes.
And Dad,
Gabe
I'm gonna be
Vincent.
honest, like real quick, my thing is just like, bruh, um, I think he will get over it. It's honestly a better situation for him. He went from going to one of the worst teams in the NBA back to the Lakers. And then on
Oh
top of
yeah.
that, I'm like, bruh, if Luka Doncic can make the adjustment, Dalton Connect can. I get it.
Oh
Like, that trade was not rescinded, but it's like Luka literally just took that team to the finals and got traded without a moment's notice. So it's like I think Dalton Connect will be just fine.
yeah, I hope so.
Yeah,
I
me
think that
too.
that is the case. Now, Gabe Vincent, you mentioned him. I'm going to briefly talk about that because I have not. I'd been on him. Pause. Um, Earlier in the season, I said it over and over and over again. I was like, trade him. And then the other night when you and I were texting back and forth, I was like, has he been listening? Because this dude is trying to prove me to sound incompetent and make me sound like I'm a fool. I'm like, no, I remember what I saw earlier in this season, but I don't know what happened. I don't know what switch got flipped, and I'm sure he's probably the healthiest he's been in a while.
Yeah.
But it's been fun to watch. There were some plays the other night, and I was like, oh, he's not gonna. Oh, good shot. No, he didn't pull. Good shot. That's what was happening the other night when I was watching the game. So that is refreshing to see. I'm excited about, to your point, Dalton Connect coming back.
And we
And I
still
know,
have Dorian Finney-Smith and Vando been hooping. I didn't even mention them.
well, and that's one thing that I was going to say. With Luca being there, those two have to play well
They
now.
have to.
They have to because of the defensive liability that Luca is.
And that's why Gabe Vincent, to your point, is going to be even more important because he's a great defender too. So
Yes.
like, there's going to be stretches where, say, we're playing the Thunder, like Luca's not going to be guarding shit. They're going to have to put Gabe Vincent on him, or they might mess around and put a Dorian Finney-Smith on him. To your point.
Yes. Or Vando.
Yep, or
And
Vanda. Facts.
exactly. So that's why they are going to be vitally important going forward. So I like the mix of what we're bringing. Um, I know that all the talk about LeBron and Luca not being able to coexist. That's
They're
foolishness. For those who
idiots.
know, yeah, for those who know basketball, you got two of the highest IQ dudes in basketball who are going to figure it out. So
Facts.
I'm not concerned about that at all. So switching very quickly over to one other topic because now that Giannis is out of the All Star game,
And
your
Anthony
boy
Davis.
and Anthony Davis, your boy,
Yep.
I saw. So Kyrie got named
Yeah,
today,
literally. You
correct?
remember? You remember? I called you around lunchtime, and I said because you remember at that point they had announced Trey Young, which I was over the moon about. He should have already been in the All Star game. He shouldn't have had to been a replacement. And no bias there. He is my favorite player, but everybody knows that and knows
How you gonna say
basketball.
there's no bias, but he's your favorite player?
But
Come
was
on, man.
but was what everybody agreed though. Like
No,
you know what
you
I'm
and
saying?
I both agreed,
Yes, sir.
but
But you remember
yeah,
I even said at lunchtime before they announced it, I was like,
Kyrie.
I was literally. You remember I said I was like, yeah, people were kind of upset that Kyrie got snubbed. I wouldn't be shocked if he ends up being the one that replaces Anthony Davis. And I knew they were going to pick a guy from the West with AD being out west. And yeah, they announced Kyrie's going to replace Anthony Davis. So
Yeah.
only thing that sucks about that is I was looking forward to because they did the draft last week and LeBron and AD were on the same team. So it's
Ooh,
gonna suck that they won't get to play in the All Star game
play.
together one more
Yeah.
time. But no, I was over the moon for Trey Young. I'm really happy for Kyrie because in my opinion he did deserve to make it. But looking at the Western reserves, it would have been hard to swap anybody out for him. So I
Oh,
get it.
great.
But the Trey Young one, he should have already been an All Star in my opinion. Like he should have made it over Darius Garland. Um,
Yes.
he should have made it over Evan Mobley. I hate that positional crap. He should have made it over
Yes.
Pascal Siakam. I get he's been having a good season, but Trey Young is literally leading the league in assists, and he was just named Player of the Week in the entire NBA for the Eastern Conference. So I'm like, bro, like, how are you putting up these type of numbers and you're not an All Star? And I get it. People are gonna say, well, his team's not doing the best. The Golden State Warriors are the 11th seed right now in the West, and Steph Curry's a starter. So
Yep.
get out of here with that. But
Absolutely.
it all worked out all in all. And then we didn't get to talk about the reserves. I got to give a huge shout out to Cade. He's my second favorite player. So huge shout out to Cade making the All Star game, man. He well deserved. And honestly, in my opinion, you remember I told you last week, I think he could have been a starter over Brunson. I know people
Oh,
might say
I
that's wild, but looking at what Cade has done, like Cade, the Pistons are going to mess around and make the playoffs for crying out loud. So
yes.
yeah,
Motorcade. That's his
yep,
new nickname.
Motorcade.
Motorcade.
Yep.
I look. I watched some of the the Pistons went. Who they played last night?
They played the Clippers the other night. No, they played
Yeah,
the Sixers the other night.
Sixers. Yes, and that was impressive.
They didn't even have
Um,
Cade in that game either.
yeah. So, no, K played last night. That's
Oh,
the
my
game
fault. I
last
was talking
night.
about the
Yeah.
76ers game a couple days ago.
Yeah. So, but bottom line, I think he ended up with a triple double.
Yeah, he did.
That's impressive. And when you look at how, yeah, so a lot of folks were saying, well, LaMelo isn't going to be there because his team is not winning. I
He
think
should have
Jeff
been in
Teague
there
even
too.
said that. Yeah, but Cade has actually improved his team. He
And
has
it's
made his
translated
team
to
better.
wins.
That's what I'm saying. He has actually improved his team, and it's turned into actual wins.
Yep.
So it's hard to argue, and I don't disagree with you. If you really look at the stats, if you really look at the numbers, what he's been able to do, he probably deserved to be a starter over Jalen Brunson. But it's New York,
I agree. And
and
Dad,
they were on a tear at the beginning of the season too. So
I'm gonna add to that real quick, and then we'll move on. People are gonna say this is a wild take, but I love Steph Curry. He's always been one of my favorite players. Steph did not deserve to be an All Star this year. I'm sorry, especially a starter. I'm looking at the Western reserves, and I'm like, the fact that Wembanyama barely made it and Steph's a starter, that's not good ball. Like,
no,
LaMelo sitting at home on his couch during All Star weekend. You know what I'm saying? So it's like,
I do.
and that up until this last stretch, Steph was averaging 22 points a game, and the
Yeah,
Warriors stink.
yeah, yeah. Listen, hard to argue. I don't
And I get
necessarily
it.
think it was a
It's a
starter,
it's a fan thing though because the
and that's
fan
what I'm
vote
saying.
the fans vote for the starters. But I'm like
Yes.
the NBA needs to fix that though because like like I said, I love Steph Curry, the best point guard of all time. So this is no knock to him. But my thing is just like, bro, if Luka Doncic is not going to be in the All Star game because he hasn't played, like Steph also missed a lot of games. People
He
forget
did.
about that. Steph has missed games, and the Warriors flat out suck. So like this whole fan vote thing, the NBA needs to like reevaluate that because they even said today the only reason why Trey Young ended up being the reserve selected for the East was because he had the most votes from the coaches.
because the coaches actually know
Yeah,
basketball. They know who's
they know
playing
ball.
well and who.
Well,
Yeah,
sadly, Dad, they don't know it as well as
well,
we think, though, because
well,
the
that's
fact that
true.
he wasn't already in the game and had to
Yeah,
be a literal substitution for a reserve is bad ball.
yeah. I no, that I agree with. Also, there's some hate towards Trey. I'm
Oh
not
yeah,
really sure why. I've noticed it over the last couple of years. There really is some there's some folks that don't like Trey for some reason.
I don't get it.
Um, and I don't really understand that.
Outside of the Knicks fans, I'm like, why would you not like Trey Young?
Agreed. And look, even some of the Knicks fans appreciate
They
Trey Young.
respect this game.
They do. They absolutely do. So, all right. Well, we're going to transition as we start to wrap up with what we always talk about with moving the needle. And I know what yours is, but I'm gonna let you go ahead and go with yours first.
Yeah, I'll make it quick. It's actually two quick ones. So I kind
Sure.
of mentioned it earlier, but my first move in the needle is Luca makes his debut tonight for the Lake Show. So I'm really over the moon about that. Really excited to see him play. And then the other thing is, I might check it out tonight. The Unrivaled Basketball League that's been going on. They're doing a one on one tournament that starts tonight. So there are gonna be some
Mm,
really good matchups. And you remember, I'll keep this brief, but I think that's something that the NBA should experiment with come All Star Weekend. I think a lot of fans would prefer to see a 1v1 style tournament with a lot of these NBA All Stars as opposed to the dunk contest. Like, with all due respect, I'd rather see Anthony Edwards and Ja play 1-on-1 than Matt McClung do a 360 windmill. I'm sorry.
I
Um,
don't disagree.
but yeah, those are the two that's moving the needle for me this week.
Well, I actually have only one moving the needle, and this is going to be because everybody knows that I'm a Carolina homer. Quietly, but surely, the Carolina women's basketball team, they're
Hooping.
making some noise. They have been balling. 21 wins for the season. They beat Clemson yesterday in Clemson. And I mean, Clemson isn't necessarily a good team, but that's a hard place to play. Very balanced. I like the work that they're doing. This team really plays defense. Our our men's team could actually learn quite a bit from the way that this team is playing. So I want to give a quick shout out to the Carolina women's basketball team because they are on a roll, and I think they're going to actually make some noise in the tournament this year. Shout out to Coach Banghart and the Carolina women's basketball team. So
Dad, last thing we didn't even talk about. I can't believe we passed this when we're talking about the Super Bowl. We can keep this really short. But huge shout out to Kendrick Lamar, man. That was one of the
oh,
best halftime performances I ever seen. And I know a lot of people were hating. They were like, that was not good. There's no way in the world you could sit up there and watch that and be like, that was a bad halftime performance. The symbolism that was behind it, like the fact that he did that in front of the current president, I just loved it all around. And what a way to highlight Black History Month. We 10 days in, Kendrick Lamar just put on an absolute show, put on an absolute clinic for the fans. A minor, baby.
well, that's the best way to close it out. I don't disagree with anything you said. I completely agree with everything. It
Yep.
was, yeah, for those who know, you know. For those who don't, we don't care.
Facts.
Exactly. So we really don't. We do not care.
We do not care. Shout out Mike Tomlin.
So shout out Mike Tomlin. So, well, that's gonna do it for this week's episode. Thanks to all of our listeners.